everybody, welcome to not the Otherz Podcast. I guess this is now the Otherz YouTube channel. Firstly, thank you to everyone that checked out the video last week, which was some early and rare BBC pieces. Thank you for all the watches, the likes, the comments and everything else that you guys sent my way for that video. Now, something some people have been asking me for is my thoughts on these here, the new Reebok ice creams. A few podcasts back, I believe it was the A Gust of Wind episode, I spoke to my guest on there, Julio, about my thoughts on these. But what I realised was, speaking on a podcast about a physical item, especially around all of the kind of details and bits and pieces involved in this shoe, it's quite hard to get the point across and to explain some of the features and bits and pieces on the shoe itself. So I thought I'd put together a video for you. So as most of you will probably know, back in 2019, BBC collaborated with Reebok again to produce a new set of ice creams. Obviously here is an original ice cream. Here is a slightly newer one. As part of this collection, there were a number of new silhouettes that we used. I've got my notes here, you have to bear with me as I read off of them. We had the Zig Kinetico, more of a running type shoe that Reebok produce. This was produced in a couple of different colorways. There was a black / glow in the dark version, as well as a BBC Starfield version. We also had the Answer 5, the Iverson basketball shoe, in 3 different colorways. We've got red and pink, the blue, yellow, purple, and then the pink and green kind of classic watermelon flavor or colorway. In line with these here, we also had the BB4000 which were like this, but a high top version, released in, I believe, this colorway, but definitely in the kind of white, black and red version. There was also a low version of those, which were all yellow and were a Complex Con exclusive. Now, they were slightly different to these ones in the terms that they were actually made mainly of suede and softer material, such as we've got on the back here, and not leather like either of these. And then there's these kind of main ones which, represent the original ice creams as kind of closely as they possibly can. And these are the BB4000s. So there's this tan colorway here, obviously the same colorway that the original Diamonds and Dollars came out in. And then there's also the black, white and red version, again, the same colorway as we originally got back in the day with the original ice creams. So these new ice creams have been kind of quite a contentious subject in the kind of community, especially amongst the older kind of collectors and people that have these original ice creams and original BBC items. A lot of fans don't want to see these kind of classic shoes retroed or re-released, especially because these ones here were obviously a very limited quantities and were made of very, very high quality. This pair here is one of 5,500 pairs. Obviously, some of the other patterns and designs were much more limited than that, whereas these new ones here that are done in collaboration with Reebok, as these were originally, are not limited to a specific number. This is not one of whatever number. Now, my kind of thoughts throughout last year and into this year were mainly kind of skeptical in terms of the re-release of this shoe, this kind of reimagining of this shoe. So a few months back, I spoke to Jimmy Gorecki on the podcast. You can check that out. There'll be a link down below in the description. And obviously he was quite involved in the original ice creams as part of the ice cream skate team. And also, with Reebok and with the guys that are kind of reimagining these new shoes now. And Jimmy was very positive on his kind of thoughts and feelings about the new shoe. And to kind of quote him, he kind of said, this is kind of as close to the original ice cream DNA as they could kind of possibly get. Now, as I say, I was kind of slightly skeptical around some of that, so I kind of needed to get a pair of these in my hands myself to really see what they look like, what they feel like, what the quality is really like. Back in the day, you know, these would have been around $200 for a pair. These here, these new ones, these cost me 120 euros, which I think is around $110. So a much lower price point, definitely. And I was kind of concerned that the quality or the lack of quality may be reflected in that lower price point. But as we will see as we kind of get into looking at these shoes, I don't think that's the case. Now, obviously, already briefly talked about some of the different designs that Reebok and BBC have put out with these so far. What I would like to have possibly seen is a limited number of these. So some kind of special edition, some kind of edition that is, you know, one of or X number of 5,500, such as we had with the originals, or even of 500, or whatever the random number may be. A real limited item that really, really reflects the original ICECREAMs and their exclusivity. And you know, hopefully, you know, with that we would potentially see some additional features such as a different sole like the original ICECREAMs, which we'll get to in a bit. I think there's one way that that BBC and Reebok could potentially do this in the future if there are future releases of this shoe or further iterations of this shoe. I definitely think there could be a general release, as there has been so far, but then also some kind of limited release alongside that, and that may mean a slightly higher price point or whatever that may be. But I think I'd potentially pay a little bit more to have one that's, you know, numbered X number of 5,500. So we're going to kind of get into the shoes here and look at some of the similarities and differences and where these stand up to these and where they kind of fall down to them in comparison. So I think first we should start with the outside, the box, the accessories, and see what we've got there. So obviously back in the day, the box and the accessories were part of that kind of luxury high-end experience that you got with the original ICECREAM. Other shoes weren't kind of doing this crazy box design with the high-end materials, accessories, etc. Now again, this is an area where I thought the new ICECREAMs would actually kind of lack in comparison to these. But if I place this here, we can see we've got a very similar design in terms of the box here. You can see from the design of the box as well, the graphics, etc. are very, very similar. This lid here, now this one here is a little bit kind of flimsy, sturdy in the middle. This one here is of probably even better quality. It's a solid lid, real attention to detail. Even on the inside of the lid here, we've got the kind of BBC, Cone Man and ICECREAM kind of patterns printed on here and layered in there, as well as on the outside, which we see here, although in a slightly different kind of colorway here. If we move on to the inside, obviously with the original ICECREAMs, we had this kind of brown tissue paper with pink printing on it of the Cone Man. This was a really great thing to have with the shoes. Again, it added to the whole kind of luxury experience and high-end experience. But as you can see from this piece here, it is tissue paper and it does rip very, very easily. So this one has ripped. With our newer version here, we've got this kind of white silvery paper, and then on here we've got this kind of silver printing of ICECREAM and ICECREAM Scoop, the Cone Man. The paper is a little bit thicker, it's not cut quite as thin, it's not kind of quite as good quality, not quite as tissuey, I guess, but to have that in there to kind of, you know, herald back to this that you got in the original, I think is a really, really good touch. And it is still very, very good quality. Again, it's a much thinner, nicer paper than you get in any kind of premium sneaker at the moment. Now, if we open these up, obviously in the original, we'll start with the laces here. We had this pack, and inside here you would have a nice spare pair of laces. These are the yellow ones, sort of slightly brighter yellow. The actual shoes have a more matched yellow to the leather color there. In the new shoes, we also get essentially exactly the same box. I'll hold them up, put them next to each other there. You see they're very, very similar. This newer one actually feels like slightly better quality cardboard. I don't know if that's just because it's newer, an age kind of thing, or whether it is actually better made. But inside here, we've actually got 2 extra pairs of laces. These come with obviously the matching laces, the tan ones that matches the leather. Then inside here we've got a light blue and a dark blue basically. So again, harking back to those original accessories there. The other accessory you would get in a pair of ice creams was the spoon or ice cream scoop or shoehorn, which is what it's actually intended for, with a little kind of keychain part on it as well. Obviously the original here is in a kind of plasticky see-through package and wrapping, and obviously the scoop or the shoehorn is in a kind of pink plastic on the inside. This is slightly different with the newer ones. I guess this was kind of a cost saving. This kind of plastic packaging is probably a little bit more expensive to produce, and also it's plastic, which we want to see less of in the world. So in the new pair, they actually come with this packaging, which is cardboard printed on. There is a little kind of tag here to open them. I've not opened them, so I'm not actually 100% sure what the scoop or the shoehorn inside looks like. If I hold it up to the light, it's roughly the same kind of size and shape as the original, so I'm assuming it's the same in there. Somebody out there who has a pair of the newer ice creams, if you've opened your ice cream scoop shoehorn, let me know what's actually in there and whether it does actually resemble the original. You can also see as part of the kind of box design here, on the original we had this kind of corrugated effect on the cardboard, and this is one where you could always tell fake ice creams from real ones. This was one of the big giveaways back in the day, was the fake boxes would just be completely flat. Obviously they wouldn't go to the effort of manufacturing this kind of corrugated cardboard and print design. But on the new one we do have a kind of completely smooth box. I don't prefer either one either way, but there is that kind of difference. So if you are looking at the newer boxes, be aware that they are kind of slightly different. The newer box in itself, just the way it's kind of constructed and built, again is I think much sturdier than this original one. Again, the original's starting to feel a bit loose and a bit wobbly, and again that may be something to do with age and the fact it's been opened and closed numerous times over the years. You have to remember this shoe here now is probably 15 odd years old now, and this box is 15 years old. Basically, apart from that, these are very similar. You have, I think we've got some of the wording here, the marketing kind of wording to do with ice creams, and also over here on this side where the sticker is. We have that on the new ones as well. We've got that kind of style facts here, that same bit of wording there in the same colorway, and then a slightly different sticker in terms of the sizing and information here. But I think if we actually get onto the shoe itself, that's probably the most important thing here. Again, when these originally were announced and I got to see kind of early images and kind of prototypes of some of this, I was skeptical as to the kind of quality that we would be getting. But I have to say, since receiving these, having these in hand, I am very pleasantly surprised. Now, I'm actually just going to pull out the other shoe here because I want to show something. Again, another kind of iconic thing that came with the ice creams was the little Cone Man keychain. Again, you've got to keep these on your shoe if you have a pair. We have that with the new one, but the newer one he is significantly bigger. He's almost kind of twice the size or 50% bigger, but you do get that on the new one. Again, a real attention to detail. And a really nice touch. We have the ice cream stitched logo in here, as we get on the tongue here. Obviously on these, because they're not kind of this limited edition, we don't have the tag on the inside as we would with these, saying number of, and then the ice cream footwear tag. Inside here, we actually just have a made in Vietnam standard Reebok tag. Some other kind of key differences here. Again, back in the day on the original ice creams, we had this little Cone Man down here on the outer sole here. He's very very different to the other Cone Man, obviously, that you see here in his facial features. Over here on the new Reebok version, we don't have that. We have a more kind of standard sole, made more for comfort, I guess, with some Reebok branding, basically. There's not a huge amount of Reebok branding on this shoe. We'll get to some of this other stuff on the inside and outside of the shoe in a second. But I think Reebok have been kind of reasonably, I won't say reserved, because there is Reebok branding on here, but I think the branding they've put on here as part of the kind of design of these and the compromise in creating them has been good. They've been quite reserved in terms of how they've done it. The Reebok branding is not really overt and in your eye. If you looked at these from a distance, you wouldn't necessarily realise they were a Reebok shoe at all. Another kind of slight difference is on the back of the shoe. So we have, obviously here we have a leather backing on the original ICECREAM with, again, this kind of special looking Cone Man in here. On these newer ones, we have this kind of suede back instead. The suede, obviously, we never really saw on the original ICECREAMs. We saw parts of them on the board flip, and obviously the Complex Con exclusive version of this, which is a kind of all yellow colorway, is kind of essentially all suede. But we've got this a little touch of suede on the back. We've actually got the Cones and Bones logo here. So that heralds back more to the ICECREAM side of things and the ICECREAM branding. I'm not sure which I prefer. I like the touch of suede here on the outside. It just gives it something different in contrast to the leather. And I also love this Cones and Bones design in this logo anyway. So I'm not too bothered that they've kind of changed that at all. On the inside of the shoe, on the originals, we had a circular ICECREAM logo. On these ones here, we have the Cones and Bones inside as well. Again, the inside of these mainly leather. The inside of these a softer material, certainly not leather, just a kind of standard inside of a shoe here. But then the rest of this shoe. So, as I mentioned, with the Reebok branding, there is a Reebok logo here. Obviously, you hopefully be able to see it if I do a close-up. You've also got this Reebok logo here on the outside of the shoe, and then it also appears here on the inside. Again, it blends in quite well though. It's not done in different colorways. It doesn't kind of stick out or stand out in any way. So it's not overt. It's done quite subtly, which I quite like. Props to Reebok for that. Yeah, the main difference with these shoes, and this is kind of a point that goes back to the originals, and one of the reasons why the originals were so special is obviously if you collect these, you know about the sole on the original ICECREAM. So you have this, and then on the other shoe, which would stand here, you have kind of a matching half, which creates a full image. So you've got this kind of see-through plastic with this print on the inside underneath it, and you have this kind of textured rubber or plastic here, basically, with these kind of almost diamond sweet spots that you can kind of see straight through that aren't quite as textured. Now, obviously, this was a real feature point of an ICECREAM sneaker originally. Unfortunately, I believe that's probably too cost prohibitive to make for these newer ones. So here we just have a standard Reebok sole. There is this kind of weird part up here, which I think is meant to reflect or tie back to this kind of sweet spot that you get up here, but it does just look a little bit cheesy, I feel. I would prefer that not to be there, if I'm honest. I think that's trying to pay homage to the parts that are on this shoe, but they've not actually been able to do it. And I don't think that works quite well. As I mentioned earlier, what I would potentially like to see is a limited version of these, perhaps, or other designs, a one of 5,500. And as part of that, I feel what they could do is increase the price point slightly, but use that additional margin that they get to actually produce a classic ICECREAM sole under here. Now, I understand that these original ones, these are obviously very, very expensive to make and to design. You've got the different components of the sole here, the different materials, obviously the design and the printing that goes on underneath here, and then affixing this. I understand it's a very expensive manufacturing process to undertake, and that's probably why it hasn't made it to this shoe with the lower price point. But I think I, and probably many other people as well, would pay the extra money if there was the ability to have a limited sneaker that had these additional features on them that really reflected this original ice cream design. Now, with all that being said, we have to remember this original shoe was around $200, very limited quantities. I don't think they ever really made much money off of these, to be honest. It would have been very expensive to create the molds for these, do the manufacturing for them. The limited quantities would mean you're not generating as much kind of income on them. So the price point for these has had to come down. It's had to come down to 120 euros, so $100, $110 roughly. And we lose certain features there and we're compromising in certain areas. But I have to say, for 120 euros, this shoe is amazing value for money. Now, as I mentioned on the podcast previously, you can go out and you can buy an Adidas N.E.R.D, let's say one of the Pharrell ones, and they will cost me over here in Finland 250 euros roughly. And for that, I get the shoe, I get some cardboardy type paper wrapped around them, and I get a standard Adidas box. The same box that I would get if I was buying a 50 euro pair of Stan Smiths or tennis shoes that are on sale somewhere. You're buying a premium high-end shoe, but you're not getting the premium high-end experience with it, at least in terms of the packaging and the accessories. But with these, you are really getting a premium package and experience with the accessories you got in the originals, albeit with some tweaks and some changes, but it's essentially there. I would say the packaging and the accessories and things that you get with this new shoe, it's essentially 95% of what you would get in this original. You've got all the components, they're obviously made slightly differently, they look slightly different here and there, but you've basically got it all, even down to the kind of little rubber ice cream keychain. And one thing I have just noticed while I'm actually fiddling with them here is the original here, even kind of on the back, has ice cream just raised up very, very slightly. And then if we look at the newer one, this also has the same ice cream on the back, just slightly raised up. Really, really nice attention to detail. Reebok have obviously really looked closely at the originals and they've replicated stuff, wherever they can. One other very quick point where I talk about kind of the attention to detail that we've got with this shoe, and I completely forgot about this until a moment ago. On the originals here, on the kind of lace tips, you have that cone man. Now that's a very small detail. Obviously it costs money to print on such a small space on this kind of lace tip. It's an extra cost. What we have on the newer ones, and these laces have not even been undone yet, but I can just pull one out here and show you, is we have the same. We have the cone man on the lace tip here as well. And I want to say it's printed probably even better. It's an even better print, to be honest, and it's a clearer image. So again, that little tiny attention to detail. And that little cone man, he also appears on the lace tips of the spare laces that you get as well, the extra pairs that you get here. Again, the originals, one extra pair of laces with them. These newer ones, two extra pairs in this colorway, a light blue and a dark blue to kind of match the accenting colors that you get here on the shoe. So again, another really, really nice attention to detail, which goes a long way for me. It's these little touches that show me that the guys at Reebok and at BBC have really paid attention. They have done as best they can. It's by no means perfect. It's by no means an original ice cream shoe, but it's, as I mentioned earlier, and as Jimmy mentioned, this is as close to the original ice cream DNA as I think we will get. As I say, there are some features we're missing and there are some compromises, which obviously have to come into play because of the price point. But for 120 euros, I think this is an excellent, excellent shoe. If you're an original ice cream fan or collector and you're kind of on the fence as to what you think about this shoe and whether you should or shouldn't purchase one, I would say for this price point, go out and get a pair. Because even if these are just everyday beta shoes, you're still getting good value for money. You're still getting this almost original type box. You're still getting the accessories. you're getting this original pattern and design, albeit on a new silhouette and new shoe type. And for me, the way I kind of look at it is that the stuff you're getting here is already much more than you get for a much more expensive sneaker. This kind of price point, around 120 euros, over here in Finland is probably roughly around what I would pay for an Air Max 90. I wear a lot of Air Max 90s, they're my kind of day-to-day shoes. They will range from 120 to 140 euros here in Finland in a standard sneaker store. So to be able to get this for the same price, with all these little bits and pieces, all these extras, this kind of great box, obviously the amazing design and everything, I think is really, really great value for money. And I would highly recommend getting a pair. I can't attest to how comfortable this shoe is on a kind of day-to-day wear, because as you can see, I've still not even taken the kind of packaging out from inside of these or laced them up properly. For the moment, they're staying dead stock. They're going to stay in the box. I will hopefully start wearing them at some point soon, maybe once the summer's here, once we can get back outside again. But for now, they'll kind of stay like this. So I don't really know how comfy they are necessarily, but you know, Reebok have been making sneakers for years. This is a kind of classic Reebok silhouette and design. I would imagine, you know, the kind of quality of the leather, the materials in general, they're still going to be a really, really comfy sneaker just to wear day to day. Going forward, you know, I would like to see an ICECREAM 3.0, so maybe another iteration of these here with some more of the prints that we saw from the original ICECREAMs, so like this and money rolls and beepers, etc. But again, maybe with a slightly premium tier as well, where we maybe do pay 200 euros or $200. We get less Reebok branding, we get more leather, and we perhaps get the sole underneath that we really, really want and that really make the shoe an ICECREAM, just like the originals here. Anyway, that's my quick overview of the new BBC Reebok ICECREAMs. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to see more stuff like this, if you want me to pick out any specific points on this shoe and talk about them in future videos, do more reviews of other BBC stuff, more ICECREAM stuff, please let me know. Drop me a message on Instagram or down in the comments below. At Instagram, you can find me at Steve R. Penny. You can find the Otherz Podcast at Otherz Podcast, funnily enough. And you can also go to the website, which is theothers.net. There you'll find all the podcast episodes which you can stream. You can also watch all the videos that I'm now sort of creating and putting out, and links to kind of all the people that have appeared on the shows and all the other kind of stuff that we do as well. If you want to help support the podcast, this YouTube channel that I'm now putting content on, you can head over to othersmerch.com, where you can purchase t-shirts, hoodies, apparel, accessories, pretty much everything under the sun, with lots of kind of cool Otherz logo designs from our good friend Rafa at Zirk_illustrations. Hopefully some more designs coming at some point in the future, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But if you want to help and support, we don't really make much money off of it, but you know, please go over there, check out the stuff. You may see something you like, and you know, every dollar, every euro counts and helps me kind of keep creating content like this and the podcast and trying to get stuff out there as regularly as possible. But that's it for now, everybody. I'll leave it there. As I say, comments and questions, put them below, get in touch. I'll hopefully have some more videos coming soon, as well as some more podcasts. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.